Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall, and it's out to Washington this week for an update on the 2023 hop crop and to hear how the timing of the harvest impacts flavor and aroma. Eric Desmarais and Alexandra Nowell of CLS Farms in Yakima are both here to share their insights. But first, please go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can find original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. You can listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. This show and all of the work we do is supported by you. You can please go visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer, and a few bucks goes a long way to help keep the content fresh and to fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. And if you'd like to learn more about advertising on the show, please email info@allaboutbeer.com. Mid-September means the hop harvest is in full swing in the Pacific Northewest. And to get insight on what's happening with the harvest this year, I'm so pleased to be joined by Eric Desmarais, the fourth-generation owner of CLS Farms in Yakima, and Alexandra Nowell, the technical brewing advisor to the farm. They've been busy taking stock of all that's happening amid the acres and running sensory and talking with brewers. They've also been looking at the calendar and trying to understand the aromas and flavors that the hop present when they're picked. It's something that gets a good amount of attention at CLS Farms these days. Earlier this year, they hosted a seminar at the Craft Brewers Conference titled Finding the Edges, the Intersection of Art and Science Hop Picking Windows. On that panel, they were joined by Tom Nielsen of Sierra Nevada and Stephanie Conn of VGF Farms. The seminar explored the diversity of hop aromas that can develop based on when a variety is harvested. And in this conversation, they're going to share details on that and what they've additionally learned this season. So how does harvest time impact the flavor of the hops? One example that CLS found is that harvesting El Dorado towards the end of September brings out its tropical and candy aromas, whereas early harvested El Dorado has more citrus and melon character. It's a fascinating subject and science. Here's our conversation. We are recording this as we get to mid-September 2023. What's it like on the ground in Yakima these days?
I'll let Eric start with that one.
Yeah, I'll start. That's cool. Well, it's busy. All the farms are picking, obviously, by now. There's a little herky-jerky starting out this year. There was some early bloom, split bloom. These are all things that have been talked about already, but that's
not on this show.
That's true. That's true. Not on this show. That's right. And so there was primarily in the variety Centennial, which is still a major variety. It's it's a lot less acreage than it used to, but it's still an important major variety. And it started having blooms in early June, cones in early July. A lot of the plants actually had a second flush of growth. And so what happened was you had a situation where the vines had very overripe cones on them and very underripe cones in August early August. So, which happens periodically. It's not something that is super rare, but it's probably a once every 4-year type event, 4 or 5 year type event. So in Centennial, the rest of the variety showed some of it, but not to the extent that Centennial did. So there was a lot of people who started, picked a field or two, stopped, and then started and stopped. And that included us as well. So there was a lot of start and stop that went on. And then the rest of the varieties are actually, more on a very normal curve. And so some of their ripeness was actually delayed just slightly. And so a few farms shut down last weekend. That's been going on, which is, pretty, not really, that's fairly unheard of.
Yeah.
The start and stop, that kind of stuff.
And what does that do for the workforce with the start and stop? Do you lose folks? Do you gain folks? Is it?
Yeah. I mean, nobody likes to do it. Nobody likes to do it because everybody gets in a sync and a timing and kind of a flow. And when you disrupt the flow, it's sometimes hard to restart the flow. and but the workforce system seemed to take it fairly well. We have other in Washington State. The overtime laws now include agriculture, and so which is new for us.
I remember we talked about that last year when I visited. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the then there's also a combination this year. There's less acreage, so there's some idle acreage out there. So a lot of farms don't have quite as much acreage as they had last year. And so, if you drop off a Sunday, you keep your overtime down a little bit, still keeps you on track for your picking window. And so I think the workforce has just come to the acceptance that that's going to be part of what we do moving forward. And so, it's almost harder for me, the owner, to adjust than maybe them to a degree, because you're kind of twiddling your thumbs and you're not used to that. So it went fine. I mean, I have not heard of any issues at any farms. I think, sometimes you lose a person or two, but it pretty well went fine. I didn't see any real fallout.
Okay. Sorry, I sidetracked you with that question. You were still talking about the fields. Fine. Yeah.
So other than that, I mean, I think the Centennial yields were very they were low. They were well below normal. So that wasn't a good start to most of the Centennial growers. We personally felt good about ours, and they yielded very normally for us. So we kind of were able to avoid that a little bit. So, but as an industry whole, it was a pretty rough start of the season with Centennial. I think now that we've moved into some of the other varieties, it feels like a very average. Everything seems very normal and very average. And so, and last year, we had one of our poorest crops in probably 25 years. Mm-hmm. And so you're seeing yields return to normal. When at least personally so far, the next 2 or 3 varieties we're seeing yields return to normal from last year. So,
okay.
So
well, that's,
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, normal's good, right? I mean, normal is.
Yeah.
I feel, everybody's always saying, either this is the new normal or asking for a return to normalcy. So hearing that is comforting.
Yeah. I mean, there's, the hop market is probably fully supplied. And so, there's some challenges on that front, but good stable yields at the grower level, regardless of the market, are a good thing. So.
Yeah. Alex, anything from your perch?
Actually, I mean, Eric sums it up really, really well. There is a lot going on. So the one thing I think that we've talked about is like internally on the farm, just waiting for this ideal aroma of certain varieties to like come to fruition. And I don't know if we've seen, and this is specifically talking about Centennial, I don't know if we've seen exactly what we were expecting the variety to kind of showcase itself as this year. I think the one thing that we didn't see on most of the fields was the really sort of early sweet citrus character of Centennial. So it's been interesting, the aroma has been really, really nice, right? It seemed like it started off pretty advanced on it. And that's, I believe because of the split blooms that happened in some of the fields, but even in the fields that we didn't see that, it's almost like they skipped that early phase of aromatic maturity and kind of like moved on to the later iterations of what Centennial is. And then just, looking at other fields with other varieties and just kind of sitting and waiting. And you're like, okay, typically we'd be seeing this hop mature by now. When's it going to turn? And it's starting to happen. I feel like maybe that happens every year. It is only the 8th of September right now, right? So it's barely September. I was asking myself this question the last week of August, which felt like the longest week of the year, honestly. But so far, everything's been really good. It's nice to see brewers coming to town with a a better outlook than last year. There was definitely some disappointment around some varieties in the 2022 crop year. So
Okay.
it's cool to see people coming back into town a little more excited about what's going on. I think there might be
excited how? Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
in terms of like quality, I think maybe they've all had better years too. I don't know. I think last year we were interacting with a lot of people still coming out of the COVID slump of their brewery operations. And I don't think that's necessarily the case right now.
Okay.
So maybe it's just an overall more positive outlook on everything. That's just in terms of noticing attitudes of people in the valley right now. But I don't know. It was a pretty busy start for us because we started picking so early, and I don't know, not stopping anytime soon.
What are brewers looking for this year that might be different from years past? Like what have the conversations been centering around hop wise?
I've seen
is it styles?
No, I've seen a lot more excitement around public varieties, which is really cool to see. We've all heard about oversupplies of some of the proprietary stuff that's been going on. And so I've seen a genuine interest in public hops, and that's really great. Maybe that's because the USDA breeding program in Prosser is getting a little more advanced. And so I've been interacting with a lot of brewers who have been through that during their visits here. And there's some exciting stuff happening for like Washington specific hop breeding down in Prosser that hasn't existed in previous years. I don't know, maybe that's part of it, but people are asking us about Vista. That didn't really happen so much last year. And so any listeners not familiar, Vista is the newest
please
release. So it was really commercialized last year by the public hop breeding program. And it's a hop that in year one did really great for us in the field. Year two, it's also doing really, really well. Aromas haven't really started to develop on that variety for us yet. It's a later in September pick, but like almost every brewer that's come through the farm at this point has been like, so how's that Vista doing? And last year we did some early harvest with CTZ, and almost every one of them has asked if we're planning to do that again this year. And so typically they're like, how's your Citra? And now they're like, how's that CTZ looking? And that is a nice, refreshing change from previous years, I think.
Yeah. Are they talking when they're asking about Vista or CTZ or any of these others? Are they citing specific styles? Like, is it? Are we still talking?
It's all about IPAs. We're all talking about
I know.
IPAs.
I just, I'm here just being like, hey, how about a lager?
Yeah.
Hey, Hefeweizen's still fun.
Sure.
Like let's age some hops and make some lovely saisons. Like,
well, they still don't need that many hops in those beers, but
I know that's not what you guys want to hear. I'm just saying it's what I want in my glass.
Here's the thing, though. There's definitely some ongoing development of American lager varieties, and we are hearing more about that from the grower and the dealer side. So you might be pleasantly surprised over the next few years to see some players in the U.S. hop market actually being lager.
No, I feel like I'm going to be Charlie Brown with the football, but that's fine. It's let everybody drink hazies. That's okay.
There's clear IPA out there too. Still,
there are. I know, but not enough out here in Jersey where I am. You guys are all spoiled out there on the West Coast with nice bitterness and grapefruit and pine and all these flavors that I miss. Anyway, before I become too bittered. So that's where a lot of the conversations that are focusing.
Yeah.
It's still
and a lot of it's IPA innovation, and a lot of the large brewers, they're still seeing gains, and a lot of them are seeing gains in IPA innovation and new IPA SKUs that they're pushing out to the shelves. And obviously the large brewers have a lot of buying power. And so, if they're winning in the IPA space, I think that's really great for the hop industry. Yeah.
So I know you all are talking to brewers a lot, and the conversation is every brewer has an idea of what a hop can do and then what it can do in their beers. And they want specific lots that present in a certain way, or they want, things picked at a certain time to taste a certain way. And we've seen, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but where, for some of those varieties that you were talking about before, or even any of the other conversations, how has what the hops smell like, what the hops taste like conversation evolved in the last 5 or so years, and where is it now when you're having those conversations?
I think that is so brewer dependent, right? And then, we have some of the people that visit us, we know what they want. We know what they're looking for because they have large flagship brands to kind of represent. And it's been that way for the last 5 years. But you have a lot of smaller players and new brewers that might be looking for a hop variety to use in different beers, and then might be looking for multiple expressions of that variety, right? El Dorado is a really wide picking window, and someone could be really interested in the early and the late, and they might come seeking both of them. So I don't know. I mean, for me personally, when I was doing hop selection for the breweries I've been employed by, I thought I had an idea of what I wanted going in to it. And I never worked for any brewery that was so massive that a small shift in like aromatic character of a variety would really like mess up a beer. It often would make it better. But I would come into the Valley thinking I had an idea of what I wanted. And then I would come across this really killer representation of a certain variety, and I would change my mind like that. And I'd be like, this is what I want. I didn't know it, but this is what I want. So I think
That's cool. I was going to ask you your advice
too.
to brewers, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. If it's really capturing you and you have the ability to shift the aromatic profile of a certain variety because you're just really impressed with this cut on the table, then there's no reason to not go that way. Now, if you're a really large brewery and you have a flagship that relies heavily on Centennial and this certain profile of Centennial, you're kind of locked in. But for the brewers and customers that we see that have those beers, we have a pretty good idea of what they're already looking for. And typically I think Eric's already hit a lot of those on the nose in terms of these brewers coming and looking for their Centennial, and he knows exactly what they want. And that's what they choose.
Eric, does that square with you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is as a large Centennial grower, this is a pressure filled week for us. And so, we work directly with a lot of hop dealers. We work directly with brewers. And so we work really hard with the entire supply chain to make sure we get it right. And, and it's impossible to get it 100% right. So you've got to juggle this and juggle that there. And, every year we get more feedback from all the buyers on what they like and what they want and what they don't want. And then we work really hard to try and fit that into what we want. And this isn't anything anyone doesn't know, but there's some pretty wide variations within the same variety of what certain buyers and brewers like. And so even on the dealer level, we have certain dealers that want things a certain way and other dealers want things this way. And so trying to modulate all that and get that just right. But we have 40 days of R&D every year that we get to talk about this stuff with them and work at getting it right and adjusting it here and there. And so I don't know, that's a little bit kind of, the bigger talk today, I think, is, we're doing a lot of work now with, we do a lot of internal sensory. We always have, but we're also working with VGF and Hop Technic on some of their testing protocols on different yards. And so we've got quite a few different tests going on that way to help us further refine it. So those are some things we're doing right now. So.
Well, you touched on it. So can you go a little bit deeper into what some of those things are?
Sure. So, we've internally at CLS, there's really basically 4 people that, are qualified to go into the field, do sensory, and then we kick it around and where are we at, and so the advantage of doing sensory that way is that it's immediate and quick. But, so that's the art side of it. But that takes, multiple years to get good at that. And that takes a dedication to looking at hop yards on a daily basis during harvest. And so we feel like we've gotten really good at it. The advantage is it's really fast and we can move very, very quickly. And so there can be, there's different methodologies for testing for ripeness and maturity. And some of them are very blunt tools, and some of them are much more sophisticated tools. And so, but each of those tools have a time lag to them. And so what we're really doing is across 4 major variety groups. We do it in Centennial, we're doing it in Cascade, we're doing it in Citra, and we're doing it in El Dorado. And those are 4 big variety groups for us. And so what we're doing is making sure that our internal sensory is matching what the science says, and modulating once again against that. But that's a 3-day turnaround. So we take the sample, submit it. It's 2 to 3 days back before we get that data, which is challenging because things move so fast, and so we have to. So what we're trying to do is kind of beta test that against our own internal sensory, and it's going a little deeper than that. We also there's differences in maturity between the ages of the field. So
okay,
a 2-year-old field would present different than a 8-year-old field, let's say.
That's something I never would have thought about.
Yep. And a virus-free planting will present very differently than a planting that's got virus. And
can you give an example of the age of the fields and the differences that you've been experiencing?
Yeah, so typically early in a field's age profile, it's very vigorous. It's in its highest yield capacity, but it also has the ability to produce softer aromas, or not so much maybe soft aromas, but take more time to develop into the proper maturity window. Whereas older varieties, there's less vigor in the plant, more sunlight on the cones. Age just causes a sharpening of aromas as well. Those tend to be earlier. And so quantifying that is one of the tests we're doing, this year. It's kind of, there's some age differences in the yards that we're working on. So that's a very real thing. That's a very real thing. And then a lot of the industry is working hard to move to virus free. And there's this one takes a little bit of discussion around to fully understand. And so people think, well, oh, your hops have viruses. Well, they do. There's four major ones, but they're impossible to stop. They're impossible. So they're ubiquitous in the industry. Now you can start with virus-free plant material and in the baby year, and it will remain virus-free for 3 or 4 years. And then, but over that 3 or 4 year period, it will slowly develop virus again, and its yield will come down. And so the virus free, there's getting to be a lot of acres of all varieties being planted virus free. It presents very, very differently. And Alex, she can attest to that. We had a virus free Citra field last year that we scratched our head and wondered if it was Citra for a while.
For a while, yeah.
Alexandra, attest to it, please. Yeah. What were you getting off of it?
What it did, it looked different. It looked very different. But some first year babies will represent themselves physically a little bit differently than they will in the second years. Potentially, there's more sun, there's more wind, there's a lot of different things that happen on a first year plant just simply because it's smaller. But aromatically, it just wasn't hitting with Citra. And Citra is a very, very unique hop aroma, and it's intense. And I remember the first time I went out in that field with Reed, and I'm like, "Are you sure this is Citra. I'm like, well, these are pots that were purchased, right? Like they were bred to be virus free from a greenhouse. So we know that they are what they say they are, unless they've delivered the wrong plant. But Eric's like, no, they're Citra. Trust me, they're Citra. It's just, they didn't smell like Citra. I mean, this year they smell much more like Citra and they look much more like Citra. But there's something to be said for the plant undergoing a little bit of stress. And there's been studies done on aromatic development because of plant stress. And I think because simply the plant doesn't have anything to go up against, it's not going to be pushed in one direction or another simply because it's got an easier way at life. I don't know. And it's just, it's not that the aroma isn't there. It's an overall intensity. Would you agree with me on that, Eric? Like the intensity on some of the varieties just isn't quite there. You're looking for a punch and you're like, that smells really nice, but usually it like hits you in the face. So, virus free is good. But then what do you think after 3 or 4 years and these viruses start being reintroduced back into these fields? Was it worth it to have it for that 3 to 4 years?
I think in some varieties it certainly is. And hop varieties are like humans; they each respond to virus. Like with COVID, obviously we saw different humans react very differently to COVID, and so it's very similar to hop plants. So Cascade is really, really susceptible to it, and the yields will just crash precipitously. So it's not really that one makes it pretty easy, but other varieties can handle it, pretty decently. And so our highest yielding Centennial this year was a 16-year-old field that I will guarantee you, if they tested it for virus, it'd have every hop virus known. And so, are we going to take that out and put a virus-free Centennial in? No. But if we have a weaker yard or weaker soil or something like that, sure, that makes a lot of sense in that particular situation. So, but learning how virus-free interacts in the aroma world, no one's really done much on that yet. And as Alex can attest, I mean, there's when you walk into a 2-year-old virus-free Cascade yard, and you're looking at something that you've never seen before growth-wise. And I mean, they're very, very different. It's very, very different. And there has to be effects on aroma. I'm not saying good or bad, but understanding what those effects are, myself, I think you can still get really great aromas off of virus-free. It's probably, but our typical dates that we would think a variety would be at peak maturity, that curve might be shifted out a little bit, quite possibly. So, but what I will say is some of the most powerful aromas you get are off the virus fields for sure. And so, if I could wave a wand and turn all of our Centennial into virus-free in 1 year, would I do it? I don't think I'd do it, because I would be too nervous of the aroma effects and not completely understanding it right now. So,
oh, that's fascinating. That's so cool. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to follow it up. So it's for us, our strategy is we're doing it where it makes sense, and we're on a rotation. We definitely, of all of our major varieties, we want to have 25-30% of our fields be, new virus-free plantings all the time. But I don't think I would take I just want to follow that up. But we're not against virus-free or anything, but we just our strategy is we're going to be in some kind of ongoing rotation all the time would be our strategy.
I mean, I also think, you probably have some people who would offer opinions and everything, but you live and work there, and you've been doing this a very, very long time. I would trust you over, it's like going back to the COVID thing of, I read on the internet. It's like, yeah, but let's trust the scientists in the lab. You all have been looking at harvest windows as well. Not just, the age of the fields, but when you're picking, the various varietals of hops and what they're doing, or how they're presenting, I guess I should say, when they're being harvested. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so there's one discussion where it says, okay, we're gonna take variety X and we're gonna harvest it at what would quote be its peak maturity, and that produces aroma Y, right? And so, but what we're really messing around with is like in CTZ's case, taking it way early. So it's not we're not in any kind of proper maturity window with CTZ when we harvest it 3 weeks early. But when you go that early, it changes the aroma, and it's a different kind of aroma. And then other varieties, when you go extremely late, a whole different kind of aroma might show up. And so trying to learn those edges, I think, on both sides is something that CLS is really, really working hard on to understand. And because frankly, I mean, if it opens up more aromas, I mean, that you have existing varieties that can provide different aromas just by being in a different window, right? So it just gives brewers more choices. and frankly, it helps us, we can't just wave our wand and pick all the hops on one day. It's an agricultural product. It's a 40-day window, and we're hunting and pecking all the time for something. So something like an early CTZ might fit really great because it delays us several days to give our Eldorado more time to get to a late Eldorado for something along those lines. So I think there's one discussion about trying to get to what's called proper or peak maturity of a variety and what that aroma is. But really, so we're definitely on that train is for sure. But the other train we're on is what can we get out of these varieties that maybe no one else has yet by going late or going early. And we're actually have a project going with Russian River where they were very interested in the legacy variety Brewer's Gold.
Okay.
And so
it's not a hop you hear brought up all that much anymore.
Nope,
so yeah.
Nope. And so we planted a small plot of it, and they're buying most of it. And they don't want us to pick it at what it would normally be. They want us to mess around going very late, or even looking at it very early. They want to expand the window way out to understand what that variety could be in a non-traditional harvest window. And so this is our first year. It's a really nice planting. It's super healthy. It's going to be late, just naturally it's going to be late. So that's a very on the ground, real example of a brewer who's wanting to take something and push it to the edge and see what kind of aromas can pop out of it. So.
And what's funny about that one, and because so now we're going to be on Brewer's Gold watch as the plant continues to mature. Mm-hmm. But I was talking with Vinny about this, and I was like, "So what are you looking for?" Because we're the ones that are in the fields, kind of checking out what's going on. Variety is like, honestly, I don't know, right? Because it's something that has been traditionally picked at one time, fairly early, and because we're going to push the harvest window of this variety, it's like I'm not really sure what's going to come about. By letting it hang a little bit longer. So I think we're all very interested to see what develops. I'm certainly interested to see what he brews with it.
Yeah,
you never know what a few years from now are people going to be like really jazzed on Brewer's Gold. I don't know. So certainly by the book, it has interesting aromatics on paper. I mean, one of them is black currant, so cattiness, and I think a lot of us equate cattiness to a hop like Simcoe. Yep. And if you're able to round out tropical fruit and cattiness in a variety like Brewer's Gold because you pick it later, I think that shows some promise.
Huh. I'm wondering, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this question, because obviously not being a farmer, but it was, you'd pick when you thought the hops were ready, like traditionally, right? It's, a tomato looks ripe, you're going to pick the tomato, right? Um, how, how long has this conversation been happening in the hop world, in hop farming, on picking early, picking late, just to see what aroma would do, as opposed to, picking when it was quote unquote ready? Like, how has that conversation evolved?
Well, I mean, the big evolution really started, I don't know. I mean, I think the evolution real for me, I mean, certainly craft has been very important to the US hop grower since, really about kind of 2010, I'd say is when kind of this thing started really getting to be a thing. And so, but honestly, at that point, I don't, I mean, aroma was a thing for sure, but both sides maybe hadn't got that sophisticated yet quite on it. And so, and I'll let Alex chip in, but like what I see is really since about like 2014, 13, 14, 15 is when you started seeing these, these big, these really focusing down on aromas. And so not all growers have got there yet, because that wasn't a part of our world pre 2011, 12. And so, but the vast majority of growers have made a lot of progress in it, for sure. I mean, it's a focal point. It's become more of a focal point. So I don't know. For me, I think, and I think as we've gotten, both sides have gotten more sophisticated, we keep getting better and better and better and better. And it can be just a touch frustrating at points, though, because there is an end game where we can't make it perfect, right? And so but I think that really serious focus was really starting to kind of come in there around 13 or 14. So I don't know, Alex, maybe you could chip in on that side too.
I mean, I can talk about just specifically from my experience, the brewer on the other side, right? And selection, and I think my first experience was with CLS Farms and this idea of pushing out a window, and it was a conversation about El Dorado. And when you spend enough time in Yakima during harvest, and you're able to be exposed to these varieties that have these different windows, really for the first time for me, and taking a particular preference on aromas, when I started thinking about other varieties and what those windows look like too. And not long after that, BSG released a early harvest CTZ and an early harvest summit hop. So like the idea to pick CTZ early was not an original one out of my head, but something that I had experienced in the past that completely changed the perception of these varieties. Typically utilized, some at least, Summit's been utilized for alpha and CTZ mostly for alpha, not always in California where I brewed all of my career, but being able to be exposed to a summit that lacked onion and garlic, but instead was like tangerine zest.
Yeah.
And right. And so that for me is what opened up this concept of shifting windows for every variety. And then I wanted to get to know those windows for each variety, because they're not all the same, right? Not every hop is gracefully allowed a 10-day picking window in which it will change from beginning to end in all these amazing ways. Some days, like, some hops like cashmere have like 2 to 3 days and it just goes off a cliff. But I don't know, it just gave you more power as like an artist or a brewer, understanding the differences. And I like seeing more farms grasp onto this, but there's still a lot of farms that determine maturity solely based off of dry matter in their hop, or they pick a variety on the same day every year. And for a year like 2023, certainly that wouldn't stand, because there's hops that would have been picked already that just still smell very green in the field.
Yeah.
But that's the cultural practices behind farming as well, right? Like every farm's going to do it a little bit differently, and it doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it different.
I like that. Does this mean have we reached the point, or could we reach the point now where brewers, when they're tasting and they're doing selection, I guess, when they're doing selection and going through different lots that were harvested at different times, can this lead to, yeah, I want, this amount of El Dorado that was harvested early and this amount that was harvested quote unquote on time and this amount late? Is that going to start happening, of mix and matching of timed harvest varietals?
I don't know.
Am I now adding more work?
No, you're not, because when it comes down to it, there's like minimum pellet runs as well. So it's not like we could run like 10 boxes of one, 10 boxes of another. Now, if we made the decision as a farm to just run the hops like that, that's fine. But, I don't think that's going to be the norm.
Okay.
Because, a lot of how we've determined maturity in the past has been anecdotal and really based off of art. And now that we have the data behind it, the next step in my mind, and this is to do the brewing trials on these early, mid, and late, because sensory wise, they do stand out against each other. I'm not sure what a mid to a late El Dorado will do in a beer. I know early to late will represent themselves very differently in a beer, but I'm not sure about like the nuances of like a few days and what that'll do.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, typically brewers know what, they know, well, let's say on legacy type brands, they know what they want already. And, you'll see a natural, especially on the larger purchases, you'll see a natural, they might have one lot they love, right? But that won't fill them. And they have another lot that's maybe just a little bit too much, but then they have another lot that's maybe just a little bit less than what they like. And so they'll take all three of those lots and blend them together, and that gets them where they want. So we see a lot of that. But typically each brewer, quote unquote, already has an opinion of where they want to go. But with some of these new things we're doing, some of this might be opening up eyes and noses and beers to things that they haven't experienced yet. So
is the ultimate goal through some of these trials to find a universal sweet spot with harvest times? Is that?
No, I don't think it works. It's not going to work that way.
Okay.
Simply because of the amount of acreage that has to be harvested, right? So it's not like we could be like, okay, all of these things get picked at this exact specification. For some of the larger acreage varieties that we have. For the smaller stuff, yeah, I think that we can determine an ideal. But then when it comes down to it, brewers are like, taste is subjective, right? Brewers have a lot of different types of taste and a lot of different types of opinions. And I don't think that they're going to want to see all of the same thing on the table. Like, that seems very homogenous to me.
Okay.
And
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think
we're going to get to the point where we're going to be like, this hop gets picked, but it looks exactly like this.
Yeah, I would say the we want and crave the variability in the aromas, because it helps us modulate our picking window. So that's a good thing. So I will say there are probably groups within the hop industry that are trying to homogenize it and make certain varieties be very consistent in only one thing. That's not our belief system, but there is some of that in the hop industry in some groups. And so, but what we're trying to do, we see brewers come through and we see a wide variation in the same variety that they want. And so I think trying to force everybody onto one ideal is certainly not what we want to do. And I think not what the industry should want to do. What we want to do is add more variety and more choice. That's the goal. So
I like that. You obviously have a lot on your plate with all of this now. But there's always evolving conversations about the next area of research, the next area of exploration. Are there things that you both are thinking about that you hope we're talking about in a much more robust way 3-5 years from now?
I don't know. I think I now being on the other side, I want to see more conversations around what's good on the grower side as well. I want to see the concept of agronomics and new varieties become a more open conversation in the industry. It is something that, those that are pretty savvy to what's going on do talk about regularly, but they'll walk out into an experimental yard and be like, oh, this smells amazing and this is great, but like the plant is halfway up the string,
Yeah.
in its third year. And they're like, but this is great. This is what we want. We're looking for this aroma. But I think that there needs to be this concept of sustainability on the farming side as well. So, and I'm not just talking about environmental sustainability, right? Talking about sustainability for the business aspects of the farm. So I'd like to see more conversations around what's better for the grower as well.
Eric, how about for you? Is that,
Yeah. I mean, certainly, obviously I'm a grower, so I always want, we need things too, right? And so, but, obviously, there's a definite flattening in the craft industry right now. And that'll cause a flattening in our industry. And I think it's really imperative for both sides in the next 3 to 5 years to bear down and really make sure we're providing a hop product to brewers that can help them provide unique products to consumers. Because at the end of the day, if we lose market share to other alcohol types and different things, that's going to be harmful to both sides. So I think U.S. craft and U.S. hop growers, we really need to focus on doing right by each other and being aligned and doing the things that each side needs to get to make sure, because ultimately we're providing here is something for the consumer. And so we just really, the growth stage is over. It's in a little different stage. We're more the maturity stage here. So, so I just think the closer we can continue to make relationships, the better. You're going to see a lot of new hop products come up. Those are happening fast. And so, and those I think will eventually allow brewers to be more efficient with what they do. And those are things hop growers have to just, accept. That might mean a few less hops, but it's better for brewers. Higher yield varieties are good for us as well. They're easier to grow. They're more reliable. Those are wins for us. So anyway, I just think really focusing on alignment and being we need to really work together, because we're in a more challenging period here than what the last 10 years has been. So we should get it right. So
I know the day has already been going for a long time for you all on the farm this morning, so I won't keep you too much longer, but I've been asking folks on the show for quite a while now the green door question, which is based on the television show The Good Place. And in the final season of that show, they introduced the concept of the green door, where the characters could walk through it and be anywhere doing anything that they wanted to be doing. And so if we had a green door on our plane of existence and this conversation ended and you could walk through it and be at any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking? And Alexandra, I'll start with you.
Oh, that is not fair, John. Oh shit. Okay. I can answer this. It's maybe not what people would expect because I've been brewing IPA for so long. But I would want to walk through the green door and end up in a Chouffe at Brasserie de Chouffe in Belgium.
Ooh.
I would like a fresh houblon Chouffe because the first time I had that, I cried. And the brewery was closed that day, so I couldn't actually go inside of it. So I'd like to go back. The weather is going to be perfect through the green door, obviously.
Sure, of course it is. Yeah.
And the way that the sun shines in Belgium when you're drinking a fresh Belgian beer is just unparalleled to anything I've ever experienced. So I would probably just bring a few of my friends, probably my dogs too. And it would be Houblon Chouf. I'd be drinking super fresh Houblon Chouf and crying into my glass.
I love it. Eric, what about you?
Well, we had the founders crew out at the farm the other day, and obviously Mao from Spain is bought them, quite a long time ago. But they always come out and visit us well, and it reminded me of a family vacation we took to Barcelona in Spain 7 or 8 years ago, and my daughters were below 21 now, but they're above 21 now. So, so my green door is I really enjoyed it in Barcelona. I thought we had a great time. I love the culture there. And it would be to walk through that green door with my family and spend another week there or in Madrid in that lifestyle, and just bopping around to some really cool local breweries, because I know that scene is doing pretty well there, and just be in that lifestyle for a week or so. So I think that was front and center in my mind after talking with the Mao people a few days ago. It just triggered that memory. So I think that's where I'm going. So
cool. Well, I appreciate the both of you being here and sharing insights from the farm and the research and flavor and experiences. And I'm, as a drinker, personally excited about everything that'll soon be coming to my glasses. So thanks. And I hope the rest of the season is normal.
Thank you.
Is that, yeah, that's, but thank you both.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, no, I think we feel pretty good about the rest of the year. And so we're marching along. We're in a nice stride right now with harvest.
Have you had any fresh hop beers yet this year? If so, what's been a standout? Tell me about it. You can email me. It's John Hall. That's JOHNHOLL @allaboutbeer.com. You can tell me on X, formerly Twitter, @John_Hall. That's also how you can get in touch with questions, comments, and guest suggestions. A reminder, go visit allaboutbeer.com. You can check out the podcast page, the shop page, and read great new content, as well as the archives going back to 1979. And don't forget to follow All About Beer on social media @AllAboutBeer. If you're supporting, or if you're interested in supporting journalism in the beer space, you can email us. It's info@allaboutbeer.com, or simply go to patreon.com/allaboutbeer. And we appreciate the support. Don't forget, All About Beer has that podcast channel now. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.